Hi, romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. Historical romance author Bethany Bennett joins me to discuss her Regency romance, Dukes Do It Better, Book 3 in her Misfits of Mayfair trilogy. Bethany also announces the fictional winners of the first ever Bethany Bennett Awards. And she plays Quickies Q&A. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hi, Bethany. Welcome back to Reader Seeks Romance.
Thank you for having me back. It's awesome to be here.
Congratulations on the release of Dukes Do It Better, Book 3 in Misfits of Mayfair trilogy. Is releasing the final book in a series a relief? Is it bittersweet? What are the emotions?
Definitely bittersweet. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. So there was a feeling of pride and like, wow, we finished a series. There's a whole series out in the world. I have a new contract that I'm working on. Like, I'm doing the thing. But then there was a sadness too of feeling like, wow, I can't necessarily go back and play with those characters anymore. And so I am coping with that sadness by taking those characters and putting them in cameos in the next series.
Oh,
I'm just not
nice.
entirely ready to let them go. All of the characters of the entire series are either discussed or appear on page during that first book. So at the end of the first book, there's this like sketchy sea captain, right? And he's only on the page for a very brief period of time. But when I wrote him and he opened up his mouth and he started speaking and he made me laugh out loud as I'm typing because, writers are wacky. That's just what we do. We are, and I realized, oh my gosh, you're hero material. I don't know who you are, but then you're hero material. So by the time I was going through edits on that, I realized that sketchy sea captain was Malachi, Captain Harlow, and he was going to be with Emma, which is Calvin's little sister. So Emma appears pretty heavily in book 2 in West End Earl. And she and Calvin are actually the only blood relations in the entire series. Everyone else is found family. And so this is Emma's story. She shows up West End Earl. She's young, she's impetuous, she is headstrong, she's a spoiled brat. And I did get some pushback from readers when they're like, she's not heroine material. I don't know what you're thinking, that she's not, we don't care about her happy ever after, right? She's a brat. And so, but I knew that she was going to be the third heroine. Partly just because I know that everyone has young and dumb they have to get out of their system. I mean, wouldn't it be awful if our entire worthiness of love was based on the stupidity that we pull off when we're 18 or 19 years old?
Yeah.
That'd be awful. And so in some ways, she's kind of a redemption story. She's not like villain level redemption story, but in some ways she's a redemption story. We get to see the mistakes that she made and who she started off as in one book. And then by the time we find her in book 3, she's a mom. She's a single mom. She's a fake widow. She has a ton of secrets to hide, and she really is hiding. She's left her honorific behind. She's Widow Hardwick. She's left her honorific behind. No one in her tiny little cottage realizes really that she's an aristocrat, and if they do, it's never discussed. It's never talked about. And so she has her son. It's a very quiet life. It's a very simple life. This is about her getting past her fear and the self-recriminations that she's been sitting with. Like, oh my gosh, who was I? What did I do? These are the consequences of my actions. And actually being brave enough to not only embrace who she is at her core, but reconciling that with who she can become. And then you have this protective mama bear aspect of her because she's a single mom, and her secrets, if they come out, can definitely impact her son. So this is my single mama story. And I was a single mom for 10 years. So there was a lot of emotional pouring out that went into Emma to make her ring true. And Malachi is what I'm kind of thinking of as like my typical misfit, right? In this series, there's something about them that they're just like othered. And he was the second son, but there was a tremendous amount of favoritism that was going on in his family. So he always felt very much like he was the spare and not actually the important one. And so he ran away and he joined the Royal Navy at a very young age. He was on his way to school and he bolted and joined the Navy instead. His father was with the diplomatic office with the foreign office. And so he basically said, okay, well, at least we know where you are, but I'm going to micromanage your career from long distance.
Right.
And so he has managed to make a career for himself, but it's not the career he wanted. At the same time, his shipmates and his men are his family. So when he is coming back and called back to London completely against his will, because he has inherited, and now his mom has decided that, well, you're the one I have to focus all my energy on. But there's a lot of, ill will there. It's a pretty rough family situation. And so all he wants to do is just turn over the actual work of being a Duke to let his mom handle everything. She micromanages everything else, right. Hand it over, give it to, so that, okay, fine. We don't, it's all just business stuff. Business people can take care of it. Let me go back to the sea. Emma and Malachi are coming in with very different goals. And this is their story of tying up those little loose ends from the last two books, so that by the end, it's all in a nice tidy bow. And her becoming who she's supposed to be, him becoming who he's supposed to be. And I feel comfortable with the ending of the Misfits of Mayfair series with this. I feel like I've given it a good, satisfying ending. As a reader, we want that.
Yes.
You want that feeling of like, okay, everything is fine, and now you can leave these characters behind and they're in their happy ever afters and move on.
Right. In what ways does Emma's journey as a single mother seeking love and companionship mirror your own?
At the beginning of each chapter, you get a snippet from Emma's journal, and that was originally a writing device that I ended up sticking. That was something that I was like, okay, trying to put myself into her head, because she writes letters to her future companion. She doesn't necessarily think husband, but her future long-term lover, who's just going to accept her as she is, and she's going to be safe with, and she doesn't have to hide from. She writes these letters, and they're really personal little, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're sad, sometimes they're whatever, and some of those, they mirror my own journal from my 10 years. I had a whole notebook full of letters that I wrote to the man who ended up being my husband. Oh. And some of those snippets are directly lifted, and you change the names and dates to protect the innocent, but but some of those, the feeling and the concept of being intensely lonely and completely overwhelmed, but you don't have a choice but to go forward, because this really isn't about you, it's about your kid.
So you also mentioned about widowhood, and it almost seems like widowhood was the ideal in Regency. In the Regency era, is okay, marry just so that way the dude can die, and then you can be left alone,
and then you're free.
Yeah. Now, is that something that you learned through research?
Honestly, yes, it is. That is something that's more through research. And if you kind of put that lens on why they married during that time, the actual historical reasons, especially at that level of society, why they married during that time, you realize that they weren't necessarily marrying for love. I know we're historical romance readers. We want to believe that everyone out there was like happily married for love and that, but more often than not, it was a merger. It was a business thing. It was family lines. It was the redistribution of property. It was the woman was an asset. And so if you were a young lady who is coming out and making your debut, you're 17, 18, 19 years old, and more often than not, the man that you end up marrying is not necessarily going to be the love of your life. It's not going to be a love match. It may not even be a happy, kind, comfortable marriage. And so if he dies, now suddenly, well, you're free. You usually have a widow's portion. You at least have like his title as some level of protection or some measure of whatever. But in society's eyes, I hate to say it, but you've lost a lot of your value. You think about the way that they protected those debutantes. It was like protecting the virginity, protecting the untouchedness of them, right? Which is society construct, hello. But that's how it was. And so as a virgin, you were this like protected, holy little being that had to be shadowed and watched constantly, and your reputation was everything. As a widow, well, that's gone.
Mhm.
You could openly have affairs.
Yeah.
As a widow, you could openly do these things, and everyone was just like, where do you think we get the term "merry widow"?
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Yes, widows had all the fun. That's all I'm saying.
So Dukes Do It Better is a super sexy, oh my God, one night stand turned true love romance in which the passion experienced between Emma and Malachi takes place off the page.
For the first night.
Yes, on the first night, right,
Mhm.
right. When they first have that one night stand, they recollect how sexy and passionate. But then there's more sex and passion on the page. But that first encounter they have is off the page. So I was wondering, was that scene written and cut from the final version? Does it exist? If so, will it be released as a special bonus scene to your newsletter subscribers?
That's an excellent idea. That is an excellent idea. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. When I was writing it initially, the idea was more that, and I think maybe this is because I'm looking at it not as a reader. I'm looking at the building blocks of this story, not only as the writer of it, but also by like that single mom who was having those memories and stealing moments of time for myself, right? And the problem is, and this might sound a little muddy because we are talking about the hero, but Malachi really wasn't the point of that encounter.
Okay.
Right. He wasn't the point. For Emma, it was about letting loose from the responsibilities that guide her every day and going and being something besides a mom just for one night. And that was actually what that encounter was about for her. And the fact that it was good enough and memorable enough that it's lingered. And if you read in that first chapter, when you're first in her point of view, she is kind of mixed about it. Like, whew, okay, that blew my head off. Like, that was amazing. But then at the same time, you're like, and didn't it just prove the point that I'm actually not like safe to be around out in society? Because that little girl who just made all those horrible choices and flipped her skirt up and had fun, like, is clearly still in there. Yeah. Like, she didn't set out to have a one night stand. She was going to the local assembly room and ended up going home with a sailor. And so part of her, she's like, well, damn, I'll never learn. And at the same time, it's like, oh, but it was worth it. So, yeah. So as the single mom looking back, remembering those kinds of moments when you're trying to remind yourself that you're still a woman, not just a mom, right? Their first encounter actually wasn't about Malachi. And so I like the idea of actually having maybe writing that first encounter as a newsletter subscriber extra. That's a fantastic idea. But no, I probably will do it, and they'll be all on you.
Oh. Welcome to the first ever Bethany Bennett Awards. This, Bethany, is your chance to honor your Misfits of Mayfair trilogy characters in Any Rogue Will Do, West End Earl, and Dukes Do It Better. You will award your fictional characters in different performance categories.
Oh dear. Okay.
Okay. Which character most fun to write?
Calvin.
Ooh, without even thinking.
Calvin was a giggle fest, and at the same time, you get to, like, when his book, you got to peel back the layers and actually see that he was a mess underneath. And that was just a ton of fun to write.
Most challenging to write?
Probably Emma. Because she forced me to really, really open up myself and be okay with pouring a whole lot of me on the page. There was no fooling myself into thinking that, pieces of this author might sneak into this story. No, Emma was willingly being vulnerable on the page. So that was hard.
Most romantic?
I think Ethan. Ethan from Any Rogue Will Do.
Yes.
Because he's gone from her from the beginning. He's completely gone from her from the beginning, and he is just this solid presence. And he's like, if all I can get is friendship, it's going to be friendship and no ulterior motives. I may wish for more, but I'm going to be the best damn friend you've ever had.
Yeah.
And then when more is allowed, it's like he always wants more from her, but in a really healthy, longing way. He's just gone from her in the complete entirety of who she is. And I think that is probably the most romantic thing that you can do.
Most popular among readers.
I've had a lot of people loving Ethan, probably because he is
Most romantic.
He's the most romantic, and this is a romance novel. But I also have had a lot of feedback from readers on Dukes Do It Better that Malachi, they're like, new book boyfriend. That's just, he's rough, he's sexy, he's funny, he's like, yeah.
Best lover.
I don't know. Oh goodness, this is hard. I think, you know what? I think maybe Fee. I think maybe Fee, because she is open to anything. And she's one of the only women that we're dealing with as a character who has not grown up and lived within the constraints of being a woman of the time.
Right.
And so when she finds the chance, she's approaching it with this level playing field, just like a guy of the period. And so I think probably Fee, where she's like, she's very much an equal in the bedroom.
Best misfit.
Oh, that's open to interpretation, isn't it?
It is.
I think as far as the most misfitty of the misfits,
yes,
might have been Fee.
Yeah,
I think probably the most misfitty of the misfits would have to be Fee.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. And last category, best couple.
Wow. You know what? I think right now it would have to be the one in Dukes Do It Better. It would have to be Emma and Malachi.
Okay.
Because I think that they both break down a lot of walls and preconceived notions and about each other, and then meet in the middle and make something entirely new.
That was fun. Thank you for playing. What did you do right before this interview?
Right before this interview, I was chewing on a cough drop so I wouldn't have a coughing fit in the middle of all this.
That's right. I can attest to that. That is true. That is what you did right before. What are you currently reading?
I'm going through an audio box set of the Happy Cat series by Pippa Grant because I need fun, light, fluffy.
What's the last book you read?
The new Cheris Michaels. I adore Cheris Michaels. Her work is just fantastic. It was an art. Cheris Michaels, A Duchess by Midnight.
Sounds kind of Cinderella-ish.
It is. This is her spin-off fairy tale series, where this one is actually, remember Cinderella's wicked stepsisters, Drusilla?
Yeah.
Drusilla, there's Drusilla, right? So, but it's Drew's story. Yeah. So she's doing side characters in fairy tales.
Oh.
And they've been a fantastic romp, every last one of them. This is the third. They're just wonderful.
Oh, I'm going to have to check that out. Which book is on your to-be-read pile?
I can't wait. I just haven't had. She's thick. Can we talk? I mean, like, this is a hefty sized book.
Whoa, is that like 400 plus pages?
450 pages. And I have, between traveling and we just got a puppy like 3 days ago.
I saw on Instagram. Congratulations.
So the idea of sitting down and reading right now, which is why I'm doing audio at the moment, but that's next up when I have 3 seconds to breathe.
What are you currently writing?
I am currently writing the first in my next series. That is my Blue Stocking Bookseller series that'll be coming out from Forever. And it is a story about a working class heroine who works in her family bookshop. And her widowed Duke, of course, Dukes, who she falls in love with.
Which is more difficult for you to write? The opening line of a novel or the very last line?
Very last line. Oh, goodness. Last line. Every single time. It's a fight. Every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you woke up tomorrow morning in a Mayfair townhouse in London during the Regency, what would be the first thing you'd do?
Ensure that they had coffee on hand and not just tea.
Okay.
A girl has needs, okay?
What will you do right after our interview ends?
Do puppy cuddles right after, because obviously
Okay.
that is right on the agenda.
Thank you so much, Bethany, for taking time to join me here on Reader Seeks Romance. It has been a pleasure, as always.
It has been fantastic being back. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.